Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different, not the usual research paper or article.
No, today we're actually looking inwards, you could say.
Hmm.
We're going to unpack one of the H7O ministry's own daily devotionals.
That's right. Specifically, the one titled Building on the Rock of Obedience.
Mm-hmm. And it really tackles that core question, when life gets tough, what actually lasts? What's your foundation built on?
Yeah, and it uses that incredibly powerful analogy, right, from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount.
Exactly. Comparing hearing his words to actually, doing them. There's a huge difference.
So our mission today is really to dig into the key insights from this devotional. What does it mean to build a life that can really stand firm?
Let's explore that. Building on the rock.
Okay, so the devotional kicks off right away with Matthew chapter 7, verse 26, talking about the foolish man. He hears Jesus' words, but, well, he doesn't act on them.
Right. And Jesus says he's like someone who built his house straight onto sand.
The image is so clear.
And what's really striking, I think, is the parallel Jesus draws. You've got two builders, two houses. Maybe from the outside, they look pretty similar. Both might even seem, quite spiritual.
Sure, initially.
But the real test isn't the curb appeal, is it? It's not the blueprint. The test is when the storm hits.
That storm, it reveals everything, doesn't it?
It does. Only the house built on solid ground, which the devotional identifies as the rock of obedience to Jesus' teachings, only that one stands.
And the devotional makes a crucial point about that foolish man.
Hmm.
His issue wasn't ignorance. He heard the words. He knew what Jesus taught.
Exactly. His downfall was a choice. He chose disobedience.
He preferred, and I like how the devotional puts this, the sand of comfort.
Over the maybe more demanding rock of discipleship.
That's quite piercing, actually. It makes you stop and think. Are we maybe sometimes choosing what's easy or familiar?
Instead of the path that really requires us to follow Christ's commands, even when it's hard.
Which leads perfectly into the principles to reflect on section in the devotional. First up, sand is the shortcut. Building there seems faster, maybe easier.
Less effort, certainly. Maybe it even looks more popular for a while.
Right.
But it just lacks that substance, that grit needed to endure.
Right. No real foundation.
And the second principle follows right on. The storm is the revealer. It's inevitable. It's one thing to look strong when the sun's shining, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But the true nature of our foundation, our actual connection with God, that gets exposed when the pressure's on, when adversity hits.
And here's something that really stood out to me. The devotional calls listening without obeying. Well, it calls it spiritual foolishness.
Strong words.
They are. It really emphasizes that God's word isn't just for, intellectual interest or even just inspiration.
No, it demands a response, a practical, lived-out response. James warns about this too, doesn't he?
Mhm.
Hearers only are deceiving themselves.
Exactly. And that ties into the final principle mentioned. The judgment that follows is fair.
Jesus doesn't just talk about a minor crack in the wall. For the house on the sand, he says, great was its fall.
The consequences are serious,
Yeah.
significant.
Which naturally brings us to those questions to meditate the devotional poses. Really makes you think.
Yeah, like asking, have you built your life mostly on that solid ground of Jesus' teachings? Or maybe on shakier stuff?
Like temporary feelings, or maybe traditions you haven't really examined, or just what everyone else thinks.
And it pushes deeper, asking you to pinpoint specific areas. Where might you still be standing on sand?
Could be habits, attitudes we haven't checked, beliefs that aren't actually rooted in obeying Christ.
And it asks if we're willing to do the hard work, the renovation required.
Yeah, the devotional doesn't sugarcoat it.
Mm-hmm.
Moving from sand to rock might mean some demolition, some reconstruction.
It's not just a touch-up, it's fundamental.
And the practical application section gets really concrete. It suggests starting with the blueprint itself, the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5-7.
Read it again, but not just to read it. Read it to spot where practical obedience is needed. Now. Today.
Because building on that rock, it isn't usually one big dramatic event, is it?
No, it's the daily choices, often small ones.
Practicing the gospel in the little things. Choosing forgiveness when it's tough. Serving when you're tired.
Denying yourself sometimes, just trusting God's promises day by day.
Those are the stones, the seemingly small actions that actually build that lasting foundation.
And the devotional warns against complacency, too, just because things seem calm now.
Right, that calm isn't proof of a solid foundation, or like God's stamp of approval on everything.
The point is to do that crucial, often unseen foundation work before the storm hit.
It also points to other scriptures reinforcing this, like James 1.22, be doers of the word and not hearers only. So
Mhm.
direct.
And John 14.23, where Jesus connects loving him directly with keeping his word.
Yeah, obedience isn't meant to be a burden. It's actually the evidence of a real relationship.
The devotional ends with such a strong image. He who builds on the rock obeys in silence and remains standing when everyone else falls.
It's not about being loud or showy. It's about that quiet, consistent obedience, proving its strength when it truly counts.
You're called to be an obedient disciple, not just, an impressed listener.
That sums it up well.
So if we boil this all down, the core message from this deep dive, from this devotional, it's that faith that lasts, a life that can really handle the
It
storms.
isn't built just on knowing things in your head or even having strong feelings.
No, it's built daily. Through choosing consciously to obey what Jesus teaches, the doing really is the building.
And maybe the thought to leave everyone with is this. We know the storm's coming, eventually, in some form, and we know the foundation is what matters. So what's just one small practical act of obedience you can choose today? What's one stone you can lay on the rock right now?
Hmm, that's a good challenge. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into building on the rock of obedience. And a huge thank you to the H7O community for providing these really insightful daily devotionals for us all.
Absolutely. And if you want to learn more about the H7O ministry or perhaps support the work we do, please visit h7o.life.
See you tomorrow. Blessing.